Hey everybody, welcome back to Slavic Saturday, where we talk about Slavic history, mythology, and folklore. My name is Brendan Noble, author of the Frostmarked Chronicles, which is my fantasy series based on Slavic mythology. This week, we're going into demons again, and while Arthurian mythology has women in lakes handing out swords, Slavic demons are a little bit darker with the Rusalka, who is one of the more famous demons of the water that throughout many different regions of Slavic mythology. Before I dive too far into the Rusalka though, just as a reminder, that first book in that Frostmarked Chronicles series called A Dagger in the Winds will be coming up soon, potentially for a June release, and the May cover reveal is getting very close. And so if you want to be one of the first people to receive access to that cover reveal, and also receive free access to novellas that are the side stories attached to the world, you can check that out down in the description below. Newsletter subscribers get exclusive access to those things, and exclusive access to early previews of the book, such as the prologue, which I actually managed to send out to my newsletter subscribers just yesterday. But now, let's go ahead and jump into the Rusalka. So a theme in Slavic mythology tends to be that demons are people who either lived unnatural lives or died in unnatural ways. And these tend to manifest as fear elements associated with ways of life or ways of dying, and the Rusalka are no different. Typically, the perception of the Rusalka was that they are women, particularly virgins, who would die and had died in a river or a lake, either by suicide or being killed. Often it was that they were killed by a man in particular, which leads to this kind of revenge story that the Rusalka often takes up. The Rusalka is often a beautiful maiden who we'll talk about more about the appearance later, and their job is to lure people into these, particularly men, into these lakes and rivers to drown them to death. And this is kind of meant as a kind of a vengeance for making up for what happened to them early in life, being wronged often by men. And so they kind of take up a role of a siren, similar to the Villa, which is a kind of dancing-like nymph in Slavic mythology that we talked about before, as well as the Mavka, which in some regions is also a forest-like demon that appears similar appearance to the Rusalka, and also in some Polish regions, the Bojinka or Dziwożona, which sometimes has this little forest or swamp-like mentality, similar to the Rusalka, except less water, more swamp, and things like that. So there's sometimes thought that these different demons have overlap or are the same in different regions, which is a possibility. There's also a possibility that they were just thought of as similar demons over different domains. And a kind of odd, uniquely Slavic thing that appears throughout some of these demons, especially the Vila, and the Mavka, and the Rusalka, are the fact that they tickle people to death, which is kind of a weird way to kill someone. But the Rusalka, on top of sometimes strangling people with their long hair, they could tickle people to death as they drown them, and the Rusalka was often pictured again as a young woman, so she's giggling and laughing while the man drowns and is trying to laugh underwater, which doesn't help. And so this is something of an odd, horrific element to the Rusalka, but it appears in multiple stories, which is kind of an interesting thing. Now, I do need to mention as well that there are some stories in which the Rusalka appears as a less demonic, negative force, and sometimes more of just a mixed one, either as a spirit or a demon. It, in the spirit form, would be a protector of the river that she's in. And in this form, she could be help or a hindrance depending on the stance the hero in the story takes associated with her. Regardless, in either form, the demon or spirit, she can be appeased often by avenging her death, whether it's getting back at the person that killed her or something like that. And if the hero can avenge her death, then they can pass quietly and peacefully, and then her spirit can go peacefully to the afterlife instead of having to haunt the river in her blind seeking of vengeance. In some regions of the Slavic countries, there is a thing called Rusalka Week, which occurs in June, in which the Rusalka can emerge from the water and hang out along the shoreline and go attack people there instead. They would often hang out in weeping willows and things around the shore, and so that was thought to be a dangerous time to go traveling, especially if you were a man, because of men being the main victims of the Rusalka. So while the aforementioned Vila or Vili kind of lure in men with a group song typically, and then dance the men to death, Rusalka, though they sometimes are associated with singing, tend to be more solitary creatures as well as quieter creatures that lure in the men with their beauty. There are some stories that claim that their appearance changes depending on what that man's personal preference for a woman is, and others say that they're meant to just be the embodiment of perfect beauty, at least above water. When they get below water, their appearance becomes what their actual appearances, and that is a frightening demon. But above water, she's often pictured with long orange hair that is then used to strangle the man beneath water. And then when they go beneath water, she's often has decaying skin, her appearance changes to being warped and twisted. And you see this kind of contrast between the beautiful woman on top, and then beneath the water you realize that she's not very positive at all. An important note here is that Rusalki are not mermaids as well. A lot of people draw the connection between the two of them, and there are some Slavic tales about mermaids, but Rusalki are not mermaids. They have the body of a person, just in a kind of demonic form. They don't have the tails of mermaids, and they definitely aren't as friendly as some tales of mermaids at least are. So there's many instances of the Rusalka showing up in popular culture, but I'll mention a few of them that I'm at least aware of. And the first of them is the famous opera by Antonin Dvorak, which is named Rusalka as the titular character, and it's kind of a bit like a Little Mermaid tale with of course, very different, with a more of a Czech twist to it. But there are different Slavic characters that appear in it between the Rusalka, including the Vodnik and Vodnoyanoi, and other ones as well. Though Rusalka also appears in the Witcher series with The Last Wish, and the short stories associated with that, where Geralt encounters a monster who is in love with a Rusalka as well. So there's that always appearance often of the Witcher, of creatures like this. And then in Catherine Arden's The Bear and the Nightingale, Vasya has a kind of friend in the Rusalka, and it kind of appears in a more friendly form than in the more demonic form, though the Orthodox Church is shown to very much not like it in the demonic form in this kind of conflict that appears in that story as well. So in the Frostmarked Chronicles, my own stories, the Rusalka was too famous not to include. She shows up so much in popular culture in this, and it's just a fun creature to involve. And so she shows up early in the first book in A Dagger in the Winds, and sometimes the boys ended up getting trouble along the journey, and our second main character, Ottilia, who is a sorceress, has to bail them out from her and her more demonic form that shows up in this book. I won't reveal too much more about that, but know that there's both the Rusałka in there and fights with her, as well as many other demons that are going to appear throughout the series. But that's all I have for you today on this Slavic Saturday series. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I come out with these videos every Saturday.